The first thing we'll do is we will open the councilors and the commissions. Let me call roll for the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District Commissioners. We have Todd Citron. Here. Laura Wyde. Here. Deb Lambert. Here. And Ian Miller.
Here.
City.
Okay. For the Bellingham City Council, we have Michael Lilliquist.
Here.
Jack Weiss.
Here.
Seth Fleetwood.
Here.
Kathy Lehman.
Here.
Gene Knudsen.
Present.
And I believe Stan Snap is not present today.
Okay, and the Whatcom County Council members present are Barbara Brenner.
Here.
Sam Crawford is not feeling well. He won't be joining us tonight. Kathy Kirshner, that's me. Bill Knudsen.
Here.
Pete Kremen.
Here.
Ken Mann.
Here.
And Carl Weimer.
Here.
Okay, moving right along, just a little bit of housekeeping here. I've already mentioned the microphones. If you have a cell phone, turn it off or put it on buzz. The agenda tonight will be a presentation, brief presentations from staff concerning two very important topics: the Lake Whatcom watershed, water quality, and the invasive species. And we are going to try something a little different this time that we haven't done in a long time, which is having a lot more input from the councils and the commissioners, and to discuss how we can involve ourselves in this. The focus is going to be funding. I think we understand what needs to be done, but in a lot of ways we just do not have a reliable source of funding to manage all of the projects that we have on our plate. The first order of business is to call on our new mayor of the city for a few words.
Well, welcome to the Bellingham City Council. It's a pleasure to be in front of all of you that care about the Lake Whatcom watershed as much as I do. I've been working on this since 1993. It's been a long time, and I'd like to see us make some cooperative progress together. And I'm very happy that Patrick and Jack and I and staff have begun to meet together to come up with a common strategy and a common responsibility for paying for what we need. And so this is pretty exciting for me because I'd like to see some more real work on the ground. We've done a lot, but I believe that we need to both prevent pollution, and we need to look at where pollution is coming into our lake and see what we can do about that. Ted Carlson, who is our Public Works Director, and I have been discussing how we coordinate city efforts. We haven't had that opportunity to have a dedicated staff to work on our environmental programs and also to focus a lot of attention on Lake Whatcom and our part in this partnership. And so I'm hoping to be able to bring that forward to the council when it's cooked. It's not quite cooked yet, as Ted's shaking his head. So the main thing is I believe we all have to do our parts, and there's many things that Jack is going to say in his remarks that I agree with. He said it was okay if I said many things because there might be a couple that I don't. But we are meeting every Thursday morning at 7:30 to make sure that the city council and the county councils, city and counties, not councils, that's up to you guys, but that the city executive and the county executive stay on track. And I'm enjoying working with Jack very much. So thank you very much. I'm going to Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Committee meeting, and if we get done early, which we hardly ever do, I'll come back, but I have to go chair that meeting right now. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Kelly. And our county executive, our new county executive.
Well, thank you very much, Chair McRoberts. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here. And I'd like to thank all of the elected officials and the staff members from our respective governments for attending tonight. You know, it's very appropriate that we meet to work on our plan for the Lake Whatcom and its surrounding watershed. And I'm confident as leaders we'll be able to pursue a cooperative Lake Whatcom management program that is respectful of the stakeholders involved while achieving our primary goal of improving and protecting the water quality of the lake. Alongside Mayor Linville and General Manager Patrick Sorensen, I believe there's a renewed energy to drive solutions within the framework of the Lake Whatcom Management Program. This collaborative work honors the past leadership of Executive Kremen and Mayor Pike, their predecessors, and the history of a solid working relationship among the staff of the three participating governments. What new leadership commits to is a direct executive presence at the Lake Whatcom policy meetings that will include Mayor Linville, General Manager Sorensen, and me. The mayor and I already hold weekly breakfast meetings that have yielded productive conversations concerning the lake and are scheduled to discuss our Lake Whatcom Management Program priorities next Wednesday at the Water and Sewer District offices. We're committed to advancing this program together. I believe the three governments have a common focus on stormwater infrastructure projects. Implementing a robust plan for constructing stormwater facilities is a high priority for target locations in the city and the county. Buying undeveloped properties and restricting future development is an important part of the long-term solution. However, it does not improve water quality today. These actions do not reduce the phosphorus load due to existing development. I intend to explore the opportunity to promote joint city-county projects that advance stormwater solutions in shared, high-priority developed areas of the watershed. The city-county boundary at Toad Lake near Academy, Geneva, and Sudden Valley are examples. Joint project development will advance each government's own efforts to leverage engineering and construction management expertise, financing options, access to outside funding, and benefits of past experience. Most importantly, it would provide the most bang for the buck, having each dollar spent working towards the maximum overall benefit with the goal of changing our lake water quality trajectory from impaired to improved. We also plan to focus on the pressing issue of financing, maintenance, and operations of the growing number of publicly owned stormwater facilities. I look forward to robust discussions with the city and the Water and Sewer District about ways to accomplish the highest standards of maintenance and operations of our facilities in a cost-conscious manner. I believe that robust partnerships are a major part of the solution. We need a balanced, holistic approach to managing phosphorus and fecal coliform loading that is based on priority. That means that we continue to invest public dollars in our highly developed areas first that will provide the greatest benefit to the Lake Whatcom quality. The corollary to this is that some less densely populated areas may need to be set aside. I invite the conversations of the councils and commissions about the appropriate level of service by the Lake Whatcom Management Program and the supporting departments. We are operating in a time of fiscal restraint, and we must continue to recognize our fiscal limitations. Despite what all of us wish, the price does matter. I look forward to lending fresh eyes and momentum to an already productive program and working with all of our partner agencies to improve Lake Whatcom water quality and to preserve this beautiful resource. Again, thank you for all of you meeting tonight, and thank you for working on an important part of Whatcom County, which is actually a wonderful, pristine lake, and we need to do what we can to improve the quality of it. Let's have a good evening together.
Thank you. And now the General Manager of the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Sorensen. You know, I'm lucky because I got to move up to Bellingham about 1.5 years ago in this position, and it's a great opportunity and a great experience. I likewise I can only say from the standpoint of the district, and I'm in a unique position. I'm not an elected official. I'm an appointed official, so I get to work with the staff, and you have great staff from both the city and the county, And I've been able to be interjected with these folks and learn of the issues and situation here with the lake. But likewise, I get to work with the elected officials. So it's kind of a unique opportunity. I see the district as we're a smaller sister, we know that. But we're an important part of this process, and we want to work and we want to be a partner. We look forward to real solutions and opportunities. We know it'll take time. We hope everyone's patient as we work through this process. I've seen a lot since I've been here. I'm very impressed. But we want to see opportunities that strive forward, working with the city and the county in order to make these things that have been talked about by the mayor and the county executive happen over a period of time. We know that money is a real issue. But we're here to work cooperatively with everybody, and we look forward to the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. The staff will now give us a brief recap of the 2011 work that was done with the 5-year, I believe that was the first year of the latest 5-year work plan. And we have asked them to focus mainly on problems that they've had. Now, those of us who are familiar, have worked with the lake for many years, know what was supposed to have been accomplished last year. But we know that they run into problems, and we'd like to know, what they were, what can we focus on going forward?
Clear focus on City of Bellingham Public Works, keeping with the intentions for for encouraging discussion this evening. John and I are both going to keep our presentations fairly brief, and expect that there will be some questions that will follow, and we'll be happy to answer those as long as you want to ask them. Just a brief background. We're reporting out tonight briefly on the 2010-2014 work plan, 2011 iteration, so the accomplishments of the 2011 work plan. And as you might remember, the 2010-2014 work plan was adopted by councils and the commissions, and staff has been implementing segments of that since that time for the last couple of years. Also, the 2010-2014 work plan was submitted to the Department of Ecology to meet our obligation to provide information for the development of a TMDL process document, the Summary Implementation Strategy, the SIS. And that was done in October of 2010. And that SIS document, that part of the TMDL process, is nearing completion. It's being looked at now for as a final draft, and then the Department of Ecology will forward that to EPA when it's completed. Staff has an annual discussion and consideration of tasks for the next year, and we try to keep those tasks within the framework of what staff capabilities are. And to that end, most of the time, we do complete the tasks that we choose for that following year. I was asked tonight to briefly explain or give some examples of tasks that we haven't completed. We didn't come up with a bunch of them, but keep in mind that the 2011 work plan was very discrete. It had the tasks that we were fairly sure we could complete, and that's why they were included. What we didn't complete was a low-impact development booklet explaining low-impact development strategies. We didn't complete an agreement the county was intending to get agreement to maintain private property stormwater facilities, to take those over, similar to what the city has done. And that hasn't occurred, mainly because of lack of staffing for that type of a project. And we have incomplete monitoring of Barkley Wet Pond. As the facility reaches its full function, we'll continue to monitor that to ascertain its effectiveness. The one thing we would like to speak to a little bit at some length tonight is, as you know, for the last couple of years, we've had a Silver Beach Creek pilot project underway. And the intention of that pilot project was to test out all of the BMPs that have been considered for reducing phosphorus loading. And, excuse me, we chose the Silver Beach Creek watershed, as you might recall, because it's an interjurisdictional watershed. It's shared by the city and the county. And we thought that would be a good way to test not only the BMPs, but also the process it would take to cooperate on these kinds of projects. We're now wrapping up the Silver Beach pilot, and wrapping up doesn't mean that we're going to quit working in the Silver Beach Creek watershed. It just means that as a pilot project, we've implemented enough projects, we've got started on some others, and now we're monitoring to see what their effectiveness is. And what we want to do is take the lessons that we've learned so far in Silver Beach Creek, and as you know, as we've been advising you since we first proposed the pilot, we want to take those lessons and implement the successful ones throughout the watershed, throughout the Lake Whatcom watershed. So we're trying to now evaluate the successes and some of the less successful projects in that watershed and take those lessons out into the watershed. And what I've got here are some of the lessons learned. One of the lessons learned was that when you're doing projects, it's a great opportunity for education. So I know that the county staff spent a lot of time on the ground talking to property owners before they put the Lottie Drive project on the landscape, preparing the neighbors and getting them to understand what the project was supposed to be accomplishing. We also learned that one-on-one conversations are effective. So rather than mass mailings to get people's attention, if we can get out there and knock on doors, that seems to be effective with getting people engaged and getting them to understand the issues. We put a monitoring program together for the Silver Beach Creek pilot, and I think what we learned from that is it's necessary to have a pretty robust monitoring program if you want to attribute phosphorus load reductions to a particular project or a particular area. You can't do that with just one monitoring station at the mouth of the creek, for instance, of that watershed. We learned also there were plenty of opportunities for bank stabilization, repairing, and improvements, and we've accomplished some of those. We also learned that as projects mature, meaning after they've been in the ground for a while and they begin to function as they're designed, we'll have a better chance of actually determining what their phosphorus load reduction is. The projects that we accomplished in Silver Beach Creek are all in the work plan, and we'll be ready to answer any questions you have about any particular one of those projects as you go through the evening. So if there are no questions with that right now, we can move on.
Do the councilors, the commissioners have any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on.
Thank you, Chairman McRobertson. Doesn't it seem like it's been a really long time since we've done this?
About once a year.
That's to me.
I was speaking tongue in cheek, but so in order to get this display up, I need to hit display show. Is that right? Okay. And there it is. So my job in the conversation this evening is to shed some light on where we're headed over the course of the next several years. And what I mean by that is 2012, the 2012 end of our biennial budget cycle through perhaps our next 2-year cycle at the county. And that's principally because that's the period of time that is covered in the 5-year plan, and it's also the period of time for which we have a pretty good sense of what our plans and our financial situation looks like. So I would like to draw your attention to the map above, which is intended to give you a satellite's eye view of the environment that we're working in and the kinds of things that have been accomplished to date and how they tie into what's planned for the next several years. And so the picture you see before you is of the lake and the watershed boundary, the dotted red line that surrounds the lake. And in green, you see the protected land areas that have been acquired by both the county, the city, and in collaboration with Sudden Valley. And also you see those areas in blue that are existing stormwater treatment areas. That is, areas for which stormwater facilities currently exist that are treating the watersheds above them, and it's the watersheds above them that appear in the blue color. And then those future facilities that are planned to be constructed through 2014. And so the real note is that since 1992, when this joint arrangement of governments, this unified purpose was first agreed to, in that 20 years, there has been quite a lot done, quite a lot of land protected, and for the purpose of curing what amounts to about 120, perhaps 120 plus years of nutrient loading into the lake. And as we all recognize, the time frame for curing that scope of a problem is generational in nature. But while it might be generational in nature, there are some works that are more immediate and more pressing, and other works that are perhaps important but not immediately pressing. And when I say that, I'm thinking more in terms of the distinction between the goals for Basin 3 and the goals for Basins 1 and 2. In Basin 3, there has been a fair amount accomplished in terms of protection, that is, acquiring large tracts of property, of completing and implementing the landscape plan for forest practices over state-owned lands, and a number of similar kinds of activities such as that focus on protecting Basin 3, the large basin, from those long-term but slight increases in water quality concerns around oxygen. In Basins 1 and 2, of course, the problem is rather more acute in that that is the source for our drinking water. And it is in that area that you see, that is largely urbanized, that you see the focus of our stormwater facility, stormwater capital investments. And those investments are to the tune of about $5.5 million over the past $5.5 million since we've been doing this kind of work. And I would like you to remember that number because we're going to come back to it shortly. So different solutions for different basins and different timescales, perhaps, different sets of goals for those different basins as well. Now, I've got to remember how to advance this. Down arrow indeed. So now what I have done is and actually, I've done this thanks to Bill Riley and his staff. Thank you, Bill. I didn't make these myself. Is zoomed in on the northern portion of the basin, looking at mostly the urbanized area. And let me draw your attention to first Basin 1. There's a purple line that sort of outlines the watershed boundary and then outlines Basin 1. And that indicates the drainage area for Basin 1. And similarly, there's a similar purple line that bounds Basin 2 that describes the drainage area for Basin 2. So beginning with the observation that it was water quality in Basin 1 that got the lake listed on the 303D list in the first place. That is, in this urbanized basin, there were regular occurrences of water quality that exceeded the appropriate standards and resulted in the listing, and it's that listing that has resulted in the entire lake being treated under the federal TMDL process. And that's important, excuse me, that's important because that the more recent analysis that we have been using as the basis for determining what work we do in the future, that is the Ecology's water quality analysis, notes that it's the urbanized area that is contributing, that is the principal problem. And so you will find that most of the investment then in facilities is focused on that urbanized area. And I'm not sure of the overall numbers, but from the county standpoint, we're looking at about 600 or so acres that have been treated over the past 5 or 6 years, and perhaps 400 or so more acres planned in the brown areas for 2012 through 14. So one final note that, well, two things. First of all, we have also depicted on here, along with the facilities, those areas that have received the focus of homeowner incentive program, these dots that are the homeowner retrofits. And you'll notice that they're fairly well scattered through the Silver Beach Creek area, or not scattered, but rather focused on the Silver Beach Creek area and the surrounding areas of the city, and up into Hillsdale in the county. The point is, and as will become important one slide from now, is that some of the reductions have got to come from on-site, and those incentives, working out the nuances of those incentive programs is important. So let me just quickly note then the works that are planned for 2012 through 2014, beginning with the city of Bellingham. So I'm told that riparian improvements along Silver Beach Creek inside the city limits are on the docket for 2012, along with some stormwater improvements along North Shore between Academy to the city limits, expanding the homeowner incentive program, the single-family retrofit program, to focus on shoreline dwellings or shoreline properties. Some work at Blodell Donovan Park to update the master plan to include stormwater BMPs and get those implemented, and then continued work to improve the existing systems that the city manages. Bill, did I do okay? He's giving me the thumbs up. He tells me I'm fine. I'm not sure about that. From the county standpoint, we will be in 2012 finishing out the Silver Beach pilot project. That is building that third facility on the West Reach that will round out the investment there. Collect and analyze the effectiveness monitoring data that Claire talked about that we found is so important to making sure that we can communicate in the future what the bang for the buck is for these pretty substantial investments. Construct some new facilities. We're talking now 2013 and beyond, and 14 at Coronado and Fremont in Geneva. We've done some preliminary design for those, and we'll be finalizing those designs over 2012. So we're moving to Geneva, and that's the brown areas you see next to Basin 2, south of Basin 2 on the map. And then working on designs for Agate Heights Estates and North Shore Drive along Agate Bay Lane, and that's the brown areas you see just north of Agate Bay between Basin 1 and 2 on the map. And I might also add that we're doing some design work for likely a 2013 project to do some stormwater upgrades on Lake Whatcom Boulevard between Geneva and Strawberry Point. Again, for the purpose of reducing phosphorus loading into the basin, frankly, that has of the most concern to the city of Bellingham, the one that we get our drinking water out of. And those have been identified as the biggest bang for the buck. And I think really importantly here, and to key off on what the mayor and executive and general manager spoke about, coordinating more aggressively joint development of other high return projects at these mutually beneficial locations, like at the boundary between the city and the county along Toad Lake and at Academy. And then, you know, there are other places in Geneva, and Sudden Valley is also an area that I think there's some opportunity for enhanced coordination around infrastructure. And then finally, from a public works standpoint, this issue of addressing the substantial and growing concern about how we finance the maintenance and operation of these facilities. We're building them quickly. The cost of the materials, the staff, the gasoline, and everything goes up on top of this addition we make every year to these substantial facilities, and those costs add up. So my final point here, we'll take 2 slides. And the question is, what is the measure of success in associated with these investments? And the graph before you illustrates the distribution of phosphorus loading in basins 1 and 2 at present, that is after the 2011 construction season. And the numbers are pounds per year that are allocated or distributed among the 4 categories that are listed there. So let me walk through this. So loading from forested areas, and that is the loading that would be allowed if basins 1 and 2 were still forested, is or would come from basins 1 and 2 if they were still in their natural forested condition, 270 some pounds per year. The allowable addition from development, and this is pursuant to ecology's analysis, would be an additional 39 pounds per year, for a total of, add that up, and you get, 280, 310 pounds per year would be what's allowed under the TMDL. So you can see that the total amount, which was 900 and some, 935, is a lot more than 310. In fact, 935 pounds more. To date, we have reduced that amount by 234 pounds of phosphorus per year. That leaves about 700 pounds of phosphorus per year that somehow has to be removed from the landscape before it hits the lake. And that's the target. So that was the target, or what that is the target today. So we've made a pretty substantial progress already, on the order of, I don't know, about a third, I suppose. But let's look at what we expect to see after 2014. And you notice, click back quickly, that the pink color, the developed loading removed, that is that phosphorus which is being captured and removed from the watershed by our treatment facilities, by the success of our incentive programs, by all of the other suite of things that are being deployed in the watershed around basins 1 and 2. So now we're up to 323 pounds per year, or about 26% of the total amount that is presently distributed around the watershed. So we've made it a third of the way after 2014. What does that tell us? Well, that tells us a couple of things. It tells us that we will have made substantial progress by the end of 2014, but only about 33% of the progress. It tells us that if you take that $5.5 million number I told you and divide it into, well, I think I divided it into the 271 number at present, so I wouldn't be projecting. You do that math and you come out to about 40 pounds of phosphorus removed per year from the watershed for every $1 million you spend. About 40 pounds per every $1 million you spend. Now that's per year, so nobody gets to freak out over that, because these systems have an engineering lifetime that might be, 50 years or something like that. So you multiply it times 50, you come up with some numbers. And keep in mind, we have not factored in the maintenance and operation of those facilities in this calculation. The point here, though, is just in terms of the amount of money you have to invest in capital, it takes about $1 million to get 40 pounds reduction today. Now, as we continue to move the second hand backwards around this funny-looking clock, like that, and then we go to the next one, 2016 or 2018, that number isn't going to stay the same, right? Because we will have picked the low-hanging fruit. We're doing a good job of investing in those kinds of works that cost less, cost the least amount, but produce the greatest benefit in phosphorus reduction for the lake. Those things like stabilizing stream banks and getting dog manure off the riparian areas, and building facilities in locations where we already own right-of-way or own property. Those kinds of projects will be supplanted by those in which perhaps we have to go out and purchase property first, pretty expensive in the Lake Whatcom watershed. And God forbid we have to buy, I'll stop there. But in any case, so I think that about wraps it up. The comparison between the present and 2014 demonstrates about a, 19 to 26, about a 7% improvement in the amount of phosphorus that's removed. And there's a change over time in the costs per pound that's removed. It goes up. And, of course, we have to deal with these growing maintenance and operation costs. That sums up my remarks for tonight, and I think that should give you some fodder to chew on in terms of a discussion about levels of service and that sort of thing that are appropriate for this program down the road. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Are we going to do the invasive species next? Or is Claire going to do?
Yes, ma'am. My compadre.
Yeah. We're going to do the two presentations, the stormwater and invasive species, and then we're going to go on to discussion of both.
So, brief history of the invasive species issue for us. We completed an invasive species plan in June of 2011, and that plan was simply a roadmap, if you will, for the development of programs that would implement the information, or that would respond to the information in the plan. As we were developing the invasive species plan in early 2011, we were also had our eye on what it would take to implement or develop and implement a prevention program, because we were tuned in to the issues of the Southwest and the Great Lakes concerning quagga and zebra mussels, and how they affect water supply facilities, and how they affect recreational opportunities, and all of the issues that you've heard about for some time now. I might use that, that's okay. That's all right. So we've been working on that invasive species prevention program proposal for some time, and that's still being developed, and you'll hear more about that in a bit. And then, as you all know, in September of 2011, we discovered the Asian clam infestation in Lake Whatcom, and I just want to reiterate, we have two different issues here. We have the quagga and zebra mussel issues, which we've been concerned about for some time, and then the Asian clam issue just came about. And we are now we're still developing a response to that Asian clam infestation. We're working with Department of Fish and Wildlife to further that response effort. And I'm willing to answer questions on any of this after we get done with this short presentation. So, the prevention program proposal is being discussed with focus groups at this time to determine the impacts and solicit suggestions for minimizing those impacts to the the user populations. We've heard comments that the program should be collecting fees to pay for itself. We've heard that inspection services, rather than disrupting activities at the launches, should be centralized and away from the launches. And we've had suggestions that the private sector be involved in boat inspection activities, and that they should be involved, or should be given the opportunity to be involved in decontamination activities. We've also heard that we might look into using volunteers for some of the staffing that would be necessary to populate the program. And we've continued to research and look into those suggestions. And we had considered some of those suggestions before we brought the program forward, but with the interest in us pursuing those, we're going to continue to outreach to other areas to see what they've done with those kinds of programs, to see if they've had any success with, for instance, the private sector's involvement in inspection or decontamination services, to see what their success has been with volunteers populating some of their inspection programs. At this time, program implementation is going to rely on the feedback from the public that we're gathering with our focus groups. It'll rely on collecting more data, because part of the problem with putting together the cost estimates for the program is we're not sure exactly what the user groups are and how heavily the lake is used by boats. We don't know what the numbers are. So until we know those numbers and have a rough estimate of when they use the lake, the times of day they use the lake, the range of times, we're not going to be able to really fully estimate the staff time needed to populate the program. We also need to overcome some of the logistical challenges. We know we were aggressive trying to anticipate getting this done this year. We have worked diligently since that announcement that we were that was our target, but we still have some significant logistical challenges that, not the least of which is how to place an inspection station at Lodell Donovan, for instance, and how not to disrupt the rest of the uses there. And then finally, of course, the other challenge to the program and getting it implemented is funding, and that's, I think, what part of the discussion will be this evening. I have a breakdown of some of the funding costs of the program, and if you'd like to hear them now, or if you'd like to wait until you're in a discussion of that, that's at your pleasure.
Why don't you give us a kind of a ballpark of what we're looking at as far as numbers go?
Okay. These are preliminary draft estimated potential costs.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Program coordinator would be about $75,000 a year. Stage one, which would be a simple get education out there on the ground, basically. It'd be, well, that's one of it, stage one efforts. Would be signs, would be maybe $2,000. Education materials would be, that'd be mailers and videos would be maybe $20,000. And another component of stage one is lake monitoring. Right now, WDFW, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, monitors the lake twice a year for the veligers, the spawn, if you will, of the quagga and zebra mussels. It's a very cursory monitoring program, and they'd have to be really lucky to catch the veligers if we had any infestation. We would be proposing to take that program over from them and to make it more aggressive and more targeted towards the areas that are more likely the infestation points. So, for instance, we'd have some kind of a consistent monitoring program at Lodell Donovan and at Lakewood and at Sudden Valley and the other launches. And we're guessing that it's around $30,000 a year.
30.
30. Stage two, which would be ramping up a little bit and getting people out on the ground, would be staff to educate, provide outreach, provide data collection, how many boats are going in, how many boats are coming out, how many kayaks are going in, coming out, things like that. So that's about $60,000 for four part-time staff, seasonal staff. If we wanted to have surveys, the staff conduct surveys and interviews, it'd be another $1,000 maybe for that kind of, those materials to hand out and collect the information. And then also what would happen is if we had staff up there providing education and outreach, we would also then have some at least minimal inspection capability. So if a boat came in encrusted in quagga and zebra mussels that anybody could see from a distance of a couple blocks, we'd have some way to view that and maybe work out an exclusion system of some kind for those kind of boats. Next in stage 2 would be a decontamination capability. So if a boat pulled up and it was covered with mussels, we would be able to decontaminate it on site. Those portable units cost $30,000, and we would need additional staff of another $30,000, so $60,000 to have a decontamination capability. And then step 3 or stage 3 would be an inspection program, and we'd be suggesting a mandatory, but it could be voluntary. And so that would entail infrastructure at the launch sites, gates, a kiosk, tamper-proof wire seals. I think I've told you all about sealing or wiring the boat and the trailer together so that they can, if they come back to the launch site with that intact, then they get to launch without another inspection. So that'd be for boats that either are resident boats that are getting taken out once or twice a week, or boats that only get used in Lake Whatcom no matter where they live on the planet. So we'd need the gates, the kiosk, the wire seals, $5,000 for maybe miscellaneous. And then we would have a cost for improving the site. So a cost for improving Bloedel Donovan, creating larger parking areas and larger travel areas so the boats wouldn't back up onto Electric Avenue for that particular site. And completely unknown, I just took a guess that maybe that might be $30,000 to improve, and I'm probably off. But it also includes, as an alternative, if we do identify an off-site inspection site, improvements for that. Again, they might be $30,000, might be more or less. And to have that inspection program, regardless of whether it was mandatory or voluntary, would probably take another couple of staff. And they would be regular non-benefited, which means that they could be assigned to the program year-round on a part-time basis so that they could respond to requests for inspections or inspection by appointment if that was what occurred. So in brief, we have stage 1 would be the education-centric with monitoring at about $52,000. Stage 2, which would be the education staff on site doing data collection and outreach, some inspection capability, and a decontamination unit, $151,000 or $121,000. I might as well say 151 because I'm not really sure what it's going to be, but $121,000. And then stage 3 with an inspection capability would be $89,000 to $120,000, depending on, like I said, the site improvements and the staffing needed after we found out what the program was really required to do. And another way to look at this is that a startup year, you might need $340,000 to $370,000, and then annual per year after that might be anywhere from $200,000 to $240,000. And that's all the numbers I have.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving forward now to some council and commissioners' input. I'm suggesting that we start with the invasive species issue because I think that is a little easier to get our mind around. The actions are better defined, I think, than going into the stormwater. How would you like to proceed? Are there some comments on how we should move forward with that project? Barbara.
You went so fast with the numbers. I tried getting all of them. And in stage 1, how much did you say the materials would cost?
I think you said $52,000 in stage 1.
Well, that's total, but there's a coordinator, there's educational stuff that's $2,000, coordinator $75,000. But he said materials. What was? Oh, that would have been really nice. Okay.
I wanted your
Okay.
attention while I was talking.
You had my attention. Okay, I just want to get a copy.
Do we
of
have
that.
these in our packet?
It's not. No, I just
No,
made it
it's not.
about
Okay.
half an hour ago.
Okay.
Well, actually, an hour and a half ago.
Yeah,
Thank
I would- Yeah, well, as long as we get that,
Okay.
that's great. Thanks.
Maybe if I
Other comments?
put my glasses on.
Michael?
Well, rather than get down into the weeds, I think that as councils and commissions, we should make some level of commitment. Do we indeed agree that we need some level of response that involves inspection, monitoring, education? And if so, can we commit tonight to find ways to pay for that? I know that the city and the county, the city and the water district have both put aside a small sum of money this year, small, maybe a third or a quarter of this amount for 1 year, maybe even less than a quarter. What we're here to do as decision makers is not get into the details of the program, but to commit to the idea, shall we do this or shall we not? And shall we find funding mechanisms or not? My personal vote is yes, we need to do this, and yes, we should find those funding mechanisms and figure out what the equitable split should be.
Terry?
I think there's another question there is, do we want to commit to this kind of a funding for a limited population's recreational use funded by the total population who don't use this? Yes, we want to keep it out, but we want to keep the invasive species out, but, we're asked for another huge commitment for a limited population's recreational use on our drinking water. And so I just want to throw that out there. That's another issue to look at. Do we want to just continue with that?
Pete?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you, Councilmember Borneman, for bringing up a valid issue. But it was my understanding from Mr. Fogelsong that there was at least consideration of implementing a user fee to generate what I understood to be a significant portion of the needed funding to implement the program. Is that not correct?
Yes, one of the focus groups that we convened was made up of boaters that live on the lake, and they were the first. And we'd been considering a fee-based program for some time, but we're not sure if the numbers would pencil out, or if the fee was end up being $50 a launch. That's probably a little stringent. So we're not sure what that would be. But the boating that focus group was pretty adamant that it should be a fee-based program, and they weren't adverse to having it fall on their shoulders. Now I'm sure they didn't speak for the whole boating community, but I was a bit surprised by that, and so we'll certainly take a look at it as we get, if this goes forward, if we get enough data to make a decision on whether it could possibly be a fee-based program or whether the fees would at least offset some of the program costs. That's something we'd look at.
Thank you.
All right. Seth, you had a comment?
What's related to this conversation? I was just curious if joint staffs, county and city primarily, but also the water district, if there'd been any preliminary discussions about how we might allocate cost for year one in a fair and equitable way.
No?
None whatsoever.
He just made those numbers up, remember?
Maybe.
In terms of launching a program, the extent of the conversation thus far has been, how do you find a few staff to get something started? And we have been blessed to have our weed coordinator, who is also very well versed in invasive species, who has been putting a lot of time into this program as it's developed over the course of the last year or so. I think she's here. Laurel, are you here? Yeah, she's raising her hand back there. And, we're recognizing that she has to go back to work on weeds here this spring. And in order for us to be able to continue providing some support, we're digging around in our budgets, trying to make some kind of arrangement for the kind of temporary temporary help that Claire's talking about. So, we are trying to continue maintaining a presence in this program. In terms of where you go from here, I mean, as you ramp the program up, that's yet to be discussed.
I have two more people asking for comments, but can I ask a question first to the staff? Can you explain to us why this is bigger than a recreational problem?
Why the prevention program is needed outside of its recreational impacts?
Yeah, I mean, the comment that was made was, that there was a concern about the recreational focus on this, but it is so much bigger than that I think that we need to explain just briefly, why is this an issue that we should care about?
First off, I interpreted Terry's remarks to be aimed at whether or not we needed to take a look at the boat use of the lake. But it is a broader issue than recreation because, as has been experienced throughout the Great Lakes and throughout the Southwest, the quagga and zebra mussels are a significant threat and a significant expenditure to meet that threat to water supply facilities and to boaters themselves. The animals clog boats, they clog small direct withdrawal intakes out of the lake, so anybody that had that would be at risk. But the city of Bellingham is concerned about its impact on our recreational beaches as well as a significant potential impact to our water treatment facility.
Exactly, yeah. I just want to make sure that everybody understands why this is an issue, for people who may be watching this, we need to have that out there. Okay.
Fair enough.
Jack, you were first.
Thank you, Leslie. So, I'm understanding this is really, really ballpark, so I want to go in understanding Terry's comment, really trying to understand the ballparkness of the boat use itself. You don't have a real clue about how many launches there might be in a particular year. Do we know how many docks there are? Is a starting point, and realizing that a lot of docks are just there, I think, for real estate value, and they're not really even used per year. If we can ballpark maybe how many thousands of boats that might actually be launched a year. For me, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, it couldn't be any more than, say, 2,000, 2,500 in a particular year. That'd be my personal rough guess as to how many boats would actually be out there. And if I did the math, on an annual basis, regardless of the startup cost, we're talking like $100 per launch.
I know I stumbled on saying 100, so I said 50. And we really don't know how many launches there are. There may be something like, there may be 2,500 boats that use the lake, but they might launch 7,000 times. Because not all of them, especially, and not even the ones that have docks on the lake, not all those boats will launch from their home port. We're told, at least, they trailer them around to Bloedel and launch from there because it's a good launch site. We know that there's one significant, perhaps, private launch site at Delesta Park. I shouldn't, anyway, somewhere in the watershed. Yeah, I'm sorry, that was slip. And so we would need to work with those, and we have met with some of the neighbors in that around that site. So we know we have a lot of points of entry. I think as we are able to explain this to property owners, they will understand that the benefit to them is perhaps protection of the recreational value of their property and of their ability to direct withdraw if that's what they do.
Yeah, to me, it just seems like per launch, it's going to be a very expensive proposition.
And that's why I sort of conditioned it with perhaps a partial offset of the program costs, if not the whole program.
Well, but then it gets to Terry's point, is that if it's a partial one, then does the rest of the rate base of anybody that is drawing water out of the lake have to go in and then subsidize the recreational use? If it's going to be a partial.
Okay, Ken, you had a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I still need a little more explanation as to why this is such an extreme threat or crisis or emergency. I mean, I think that's how I hear about it all the time, but your question was an excellent one. I didn't actually hear that much of a crisis or emergency response from staff. So if it is there, if it is a serious and significant threat, I need to know that, and I need to know it scientifically. And it's also helpful to have it on the record while we've got tens of people watching from home. I think that's a good thing, just to educate. So if you could give us a little more detail on that, Claire, that'd be great.
When we first started looking at the invasive species issue, the aquatic invasive species issue, and tracking the quagga and zebra mussel infestations throughout the Southwest, we did some lake water quality monitoring to determine whether our lake water quality and parameters were within the ranges that were conducive to those creatures living in Lake Whatcom. And we determined that for several factors, the lake is more than accommodating, and for a couple of factors, it was on the edge of acceptability, meaning that the parameter would host the population, but probably not let it thrive. Does that make sense? Okay. And we were proceeding with a prevention program development based on that information. And then we had the Asian clam discovery, and that showed us that the vectors that the points of entry that we had identified for the quagga and zebra mussels were real, that invasive species could get in through boat launches at the sites around the lake. And what it also showed us was that the lake was accommodating for for the Asian clams. That doesn't mean that the water quality is accommodating for the quagga and zebra mussels, but Asian clams have this capacity to bioaccumulate calcium, and that was one of the limiting factors of lake water quality for the quagga and zebra mussels. So if you're following me, if the Asian clams are bioaccumulating calcium in areas near boat launches and perhaps raising the calcium level in those areas to a level that would allow the quagga and zebra mussels to thrive, then we have a problem.
Let me be a little more direct, though. What is the problem? Pretend I've never heard of this before. Yeah. Why, when I wake up in the morning, what's the big deal with zebra mussels in Lake Whatcom? Like, really, give me the layman's explanation.
Okay. Is there an algae component, and is there a component that has to do with clogging the intake drains for our drinking water?
Yes, the issue with the quagga and zebra mussels is essentially one of their ability to accumulate in areas. When they attach to something, they stay attached. And so then the next generation, if you will, attaches to the ones that were attached first. And they continue to do that until they clog up whatever infrastructure they're attached to, including boat motors and huge water supply pipes. They also accumulate on beaches, and that's some of the accumulations back east. Some of the fights against them have been because they have clogged or they have fouled recreational beaches, and so some areas have gone in and tried to eradicate them based on that impact.
Kathy?
Is that enough?
Thanks.
Yeah, so just to be clear, if I may, so you had said that they're a threat to our water supply facilities, and they do that by clogging pipes, and that they have impacts to our recreational beaches, and they foul our beaches?
They can, yeah. If there are so many and they die and they wash up on the beach, yeah, they end up fouling the beach.
Okay, and then there was something also about calcium levels.
When we first evaluated water quality in Lake Whatcom, the calcium levels were marginal for allowing these animals to thrive. So our level of concern was in the moderate phase. they're adaptive. They're invasive because they adapt. So it's not, it's not like there isn't any threat because of any one particular water quality parameter. But given how Asian clams affect the environment, we became more concerned with this bioaccumulation of calcium contribution. Tegan Ward, who's the brain trust behind this effort, gave me a sample of a pipe that's been clogged with quagga mussels. I'll pass around. Quagga?
Todd, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to first take the opportunity to thank Claire and his staff and the county for bringing this issue to the forefront. It's been a personal and of the district's interest and concern for a number of years. So thank you. I think the issue of how the cost should be borne is paramount, and I think that it would be unfortunate if they weren't directly borne by the users of the recreational use of the lake. And I think that becomes an educational issue for them, because I think that if they don't take the responsibility and take it upon themselves to bear the cost, then I think the next logical step would be to ban them altogether, because I think that that's so it's an educational issue. And if that pipe that's going around were seen by folks who were the whole city and county and the district ratepayers, they would be aghast that even just one single boat could come in and create that sort of effect in the lake. And so I think that it would be important, if it's $100, that's still probably a good deal for someone. If you could get the tie-offs so that ends up being $100 a season, right? If they get inspected, that's their seasonal fee. Seems to me that would be a reasonable approach for that sort of use, if that's an important use for them. And then just one last point. I think that this needs to be highly coordinated, because there's a lot of focus on Bloedel Donovan, but there, as you were suggesting, are many other ways that boats could enter the lake, particularly if there's suddenly a $50 or $100 fee and a lot of inspection hoo-ha, and word gets around that, they aren't even checking down at Sutton Valley or down at the end of the lake. So it really needs to be coordinated, and if it's going to happen at all, it seems to me it needs to be year-round with a fence, because, again, all it takes is one boat cruising up I-5, that decides to take a quick afternoon jaunt to Lake Whatcom to go bass fishing, and then we've got quagga or zebra mussels.
Just a clarification, the fee could be for launching, which would be a problem for recreational immunity for our facility, or it could be for inspection services, which then, as you pointed out, if it was for inspection services and they were tagged, it's possible that they would just be paying a one-time fee for that use of the lake for that season. So,
or even ad infinitum. No, I mean, if they've been tagged once, why would they need to be tagged?
Well, I guess that was my assumption, that we would have an annual program of some
program,
kind.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael first, then Carl and Kathy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Maybe I can help sharpen Ken's question about why worry. Have you estimated what the costs might be to the city's water utility and/or to the water commission's utilities if we had a moderate infestation like in similar jurisdictions? What do other jurisdictions pay for their ongoing costs when they do have zebra mussels present?
I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. Some jurisdictions have teams of divers that work eight-hour shifts year-round, cleaning their facilities from these mussels, but they have multiple facilities. So that's not a good comparison, but that's what some jurisdictions are having to do. We hear numbers that are sort of totaled for areas, and they're in the millions and billions of dollars, well, billions for the back east total, but millions of dollars per jurisdiction sometimes. We haven't calculated. We don't know how well they would thrive in Lake Whatcom and how much of a threat they would be on an annual basis, but it would probably be a significant impact financially to just do the inspection and the cleaning of whatever infestation there was. So,
I guess this
just 1 second, Michael.
Sure.
Tegan, do you know any more particular, discrete, specific information about what a typical cost would be to a jurisdiction to maintain?
That's just for getting rid of the dead ones. That's not dealing with the impacts of them attaching to other dams and other infrastructure.
And a lot of the, and you'll hear this when if we ever get an Asian clam response plan together. A lot of the strategies that other jurisdictions use to control these species aren't strategies that we want to employ in Lake Whatcom. They're chemical strategies. So those really aren't available to us. So it's physical maintenance of the facilities.
I guess why I asked is because as much as, we don't like the idea of boaters having to pay some fee to use the lake, the other option is that all of our ratepayers pay tens or hundreds of dollars every year in addition on their bills because the utility has to spend $1 million or $2 or $3, I don't know, every year on controlling the problem. I mean, that's really what I'm thinking. I think that would go sort of to, Ken's question. We know invasive aquatic fish species get in. We now have reason to believe that one of the limiting factors for the quag and zebra mussels is gone. If these things do get in, how much will it cost us? Therefore, how much we're willing to spend to prevent that problem. We need to know roughly the proportion of those things, not just the urgency, but the size of the problem. And my impression is that it was a multi-million-dollar problem, and I'd like that confirmed.
I'll look into it. I mean, I'm not sure how definitive we're going to get, but we'll look into it.
Okay, Carl.
Well, I agree with others like Todd, who's already spoke, that the boat users, the float plane users should be the main people paying for this if we can design that system. One of the other questions that I think that we should know about and address this evening, maybe, since you have it up here as stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, is how soon we're going to do this. Because it's, boating season is almost upon us. All it takes is one boat, as we've heard. So if stage 1 is this year and stage 2 is next year and stage 3 is 2 years from now, we're just wishful thinking that something doesn't happen for the next 2 years. So what's the plan for the staging?
Well, I listed some limitations on the development of this program. And one of those is funding. The others were data collection and logistical. Getting the information we need and getting the sites prepared, getting the people hired, and all that stuff. So these stages are defined this way to give you some idea of what kind of capability you'll get for a certain amount of dollars. I think the limitation beyond logistics and data is funding, and that's if we had secure funding, we may be able to if we had secure funding and we'd finished the focus groups so we knew how to tailor the program to have the least amount of disruptive impact on the user populations, we could proceed sometime this year with part of the program.
Okay, Kathy?
Well, this strikes me as a solution looking for a problem. And I don't want to sound like I'm minimizing the potential for these clams or these mussels to get into our lake, but where's the nearest lake to us that has this problem? Do we know?
It's moving up through California and up through Utah, and those are the nearest states that have infested water bodies.
I know that the state of Idaho does boat inspections regularly for the entire state. And do you know if Oregon is doing boat inspections?
They are.
So the two states that surround us are doing boat inspections. Is Washington State concerned about this mussel getting into all of the water bodies in Washington State?
They are. The Columbia River has a huge task force that's working on this program.
So is there any way that we can partner with the state's efforts and not take this on as a local community and get some help?
We are partnering with Department of Fish and Wildlife. We're in not daily contact with them, but regular contact with them. Their budget has been cut again this year, and so they have diminished capability. And Oregon last week or a couple weeks ago intercepted one of the party boats that got sold out of Arizona. Told the fellow to check in with Washington State Patrol, and he didn't. And it was just by chance that a sheriff pulled him over on some side road as he was going around the inspection station. So Oregon has a capability, Idaho has a capability, Washington has a capability, but the boats are still getting through those kinds of generalized inspection programs.
Well, I guess I would like a little more data as to who is using our lake, what kind of boats are going in there. Is it mostly local? How many out of the area boats are getting in there before we start talking about taking boats off of Lake Whatcom? I think we need a lot more information before we jump to that solution. I'm all for charging a fee for an inspection program. I think it needs to be reasonable, and this is pretty amazing, actually. I'll just leave it at that.
And we agree that we need more data in order to tailor this program more specifically to our needs. So.
Okay, let's do a process check right now. We've been having this discussion for about half an hour. There seems to be some differences of opinion. I think that there's a kind of a consensus that we feel that this is an important enough issue that perhaps all we can decide at this point is to take it back to our councils and commissions to go forward. We can't vote here and fund anything. This is just not a meeting to do that. Seth, you want to?
Yeah. One thing that might be helpful, and it wasn't in our packet today, was information that was presented at the Joint Lake Policy Group meeting, the Lake Whatcom Policy Group meeting, on more than one occasion. In fact, we've had updates several times in the last several months, and there's a lot of data that makes the case for why this is a substantial concern. And I think if it were presented to all the committee members, it might go a bit further than we've been successful in doing tonight in convincing people that this is a legitimate concern. So I don't know why that wasn't included. Maybe there just wasn't for whatever reason. But I would ask that the information that we've had get circulated to everybody. And I also was interested in, Kenya asked a perfectly appropriate question just to put on the record why this should be a concern. And I don't know if it was fully fleshed out to make the case that I think the data shows could be made for why it is. For example, Claire, if you could elaborate a little bit on the potential concerns as it relates to the ultimate loading issue, concern of phosphorus. That didn't get touched on, but there is a correlation between these invasives and increase in phosphorus with, I believe, the zebra mussel, if it were to come in, and the significant problems that would pose. So I guess I'd ask that you elaborate on that a little bit. So I just think that we should be doing a great deal more than we are. I do think, I'll just also say that the policy group seemed to be in consensus that we should be actively seeking to implement phase 1 this year. And I thought phase 1 was more than just monitoring that we learned about. It was also getting inspectors to actually see who's coming on. I thought that was sort of a basic component that we were going to try to create this year. Am I wrong about that?
Well, we've adjusted our expectations since that policy group meeting to respond to our realization of our data need and the need to finish with our focus group work, and also to try to understand, well, in logistics, we're still working with the logistics part of this, but then to try to understand where the funding might be coming from.
Barbara?
I admit I don't understand it all, but I know that it's worrying me from what we've heard already at other times. But my concern is, you know, if it only takes one boat, there's this thing, cost-benefit ratio. And if it only takes one boat, just because you say people can't do it, doesn't mean they're not going to do it, especially if it's too expensive. So we need to figure out something that, you know, will be within that cost-benefit ratio, because if you start getting way too much, people will avoid it, and then what will happen is a boat will get through. And I don't, on the measurement scale, does one boat do it? I don't know. I mean, I've heard people say that, so I wouldn't mind having more information.
Can I have some suggestions on how to proceed at this point? Deb?
Well, I know the Water District Commission is very, very concerned about this, and we're wanting to participate fully. We haven't talked about rates and charges, but I know we would talk about rates and charges and how to help fund it more than what we're doing now, because we believe it's very important, believe it's critical for the lake. And terribly scary. If you go on the internet and look at the pictures and read about what's happening out there, it's not a good long-term prognosis for the health of the lake at another level other than just the phosphorus, or in addition to the phosphorus. So I think we can go back to our individual councils and talk about what we're willing to commit. I can't see that it makes any sense to have stages 1 and 2 without implementing stage 3. So if you know the roof is old, you know it's going to be developing a leak, you know you need to really do it right to repair the whole thing, you plan for the full costs rather than a bit at a time if you're prudent, and I would prefer prudence. So I would suggest, at least from our perspective, that we, at our next meeting, put it on the agenda, talk about funding and what we're willing to commit and how much we can commit to.
Okay, county, city? Seth?
I was just going to say, and obviously I can't speak for all the people in this room, but I can say that an impression I have just from conversation I've had with fellow city council members is that there's a willingness to do what we need to do within reason to appropriate the funds that would be necessary to implement this, some important aspect of this in year 1 this year. And I think we're just looking for assistance. So that's just my message to staff. Present us with some credible ideas, and I suspect we'll respond, and we'll respond soon.
County? Pete?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a very valid issue. I think it needs to be put in perspective as best it can be. And I do believe that collectively the three bodies need to come up with some approach to deal with the problem, the potential problem, whatever, however you perceive it to be. But I think at the same time, we need to also be aware of the limited amount of funding that we are going to be able to generate when you consider that the federal government, the state government are diminishing or are reducing their support, their funding for issues like this. I know from the county's perspective, I've gone back to D.C., I think for at least the last 5 or 6 years, with the number one priority being funding to address the health of Lake Whatcom. Number one, 6 years in a row. It might even be 7. And we've been able to generate what I consider to be a paltry amount compared to what we've asked for. And the prognosis for future funding is not very encouraging. And the same thing with the state. And what the state is going to do is more than likely reduce funding for everything. I mean, we're talking about dealing with the phosphorus problem. We're talking, and stormwater, millions of dollars. And then the state is talking about reducing current funding for programs they've already cut to a certain extent, and then giving the local jurisdictions, the cities, the counties, local municipalities, the local option of generating their own funding, which is the people's money. And that's what it all boils down to. And I think we need to be realistic of how much revenue we're going to be able to generate to deal with all of these issues. And so I think we need to look at it from a big picture perspective. But I do think that this issue is one that needs to be taken seriously.
And if we could just all think about the numbers that Claire has given us, and if we work together, each of us does not have to generate that much. We have to figure out how we can share this and make it happen. Laura?
So am I jumping the gun and asking a commitment to an address to the city council and to the county council and to the commission if we feel we need it again? We had, I believe, earmarked money in our 2012 budget already for this issue with the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District side. We could talk about this next year, just like I think we touched on it a little bit last year, but we're just going to wait another year. And it's, if we say within 3 months, the city council and the county council and the commission, if we need it, would be addressed by Claire and his group about the cost projected out and the things that the Lake Whatcom Policy Group has already seen and been privy to. I think that would be a fair time limit to maybe expect some sort of decision at the county council, the city council, and the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District.
Given that the time is now 8 o'clock, what I'm hearing is that this is something that we each need to take back to our own groups, put it on the agendas, discuss it, and I think that a big piece of this has got to be education, because there is, I think that those of us who sit on the Lake Whatcom Policy Group have been hearing about this for 6 months or more, and that information doesn't always flow back to the councils. I think, if you just make that commitment, talk about it. Valid. Okay, moving on to the next huge issue. Mr. Lowes, you have a comment or no? Okay. Sorry about that. The other big issue, which will take the next 95% of our time, is the stormwater issue. And that is another topic. Now, when you start talking about the impairment of Lake Whatcom, there are several different ideas on how to deal with the problem. And the one being the purchase of property and then changing the zoning regulations for people who want to build new homes. But what that doesn't deal with is the existing problem with the residences that are in the lake right now. And that has a lot to do with the stormwater. And can we get some comments on, you know, how you think we should move forward with that issue? Barbara?
I don't even think it's the principle. I think it's the really only issue that is so far beyond what any other issues would be. I agree with exactly what you were talking about. We need to commit to stormwater retrofits, whatever it is we have to do. And I was looking at numbers in this thing, and I have to say, I wasn't all that impressed at the outreach numbers. You know, it's real easy to say at the fair, so many people, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I'm not really sure that many people came away with anything. It is very labor intensive, but I think that we need to raise the numbers of people who understand what needs to be done and that they need to be part of it. And I would like to see us stop bringing in all these other issues of people's wants and work. This, to me, this is a huge need, the stormwater one. And I just don't, you know, we're going to have to stop thinking about everything we want as well as what we need. This, to me, is number one. But I think that the Asian clam thing, that may even belong in this. I don't know. But to me, it's the need. So I don't even know what the numbers are. Somebody's got to really give us numbers that we split up. Don't look at me like that. That we split up, you know, in 3 parts so that all 3 of the district and the 2 councils. But to me, this is the one that scares me.
Anybody else? Michael?
Well, at the beginning of this, Leslie, you said we should focus on funding. The city is going to be conducting a stormwater utility rate study in this coming year, latter half of the year, I think. And in there, if I understand correctly, we will be looking at lake-specific projects in addition to our general stormwater needs. And we'll be presented with, you know, what could be a range of possibilities that would include, well, it depends on how much capital projects we commit to in the lake for stormwater, but it could mean significant rate increases or phased-in rate increases or whatever. My point, though, is that the city is at least looking at we have a dedicated specific funding mechanism that can be directed at stormwater infrastructure projects. I really appreciated Jack's comment at the beginning that he believes that there's a general consensus that stormwater infrastructure projects are sort of, you know, the vital and central element that we need, sort of echoing what you said, Barbara. So we have a mechanism. We don't know what it will say yet, but I'm at least hopeful that the city has a mechanism that can begin to chew away at this problem directly.
Terry?
Yeah, just to elaborate what Michael was saying, we're not just going to be looking at a vehicle. We have created a vehicle by putting in place a stormwater utility district and funding for it. We will be looking at whether we need to increase it. But that step by the City Council has already happened and took a whole lot of beating to do it by a lot of people to put it in place, because it was really hard to do. And we heard from a lot of people, but it was necessary. And sometimes I think that's what's necessary, is to see that problem and you have to move forward with it, knowing you're going to get beat up about it. But the problem is big enough where it has to be done. And when we put that in place a number of years ago, you know, there was a lot of problems with it, but we put it in place and it's there, and we've been able to fund a lot of our stormwater facilities, and a number of them from the Lake Whatcom area through that. And as Michael's correct, we will be looking at some additional rate study. We are looking at that and maybe increasing it, but this is something that's got to be looked at by all three jurisdictions in terms of how to fund the retrofits around the whole of the lake, not just in the city's portion.
Todd, you had a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District has been giving a lot of thought and a couple of meetings dedicated to looking at how we can play a role in stormwater, both under current RCWs as taking up stormwater projects in the district, ways that we might incorporate our rates into those projects, and also ways that we might partner with, in particular, the county, because we share that jurisdiction with the county, to either as a formal entity, because apparently there are new RCWs out there that we're investigating that would actually enable us to create a formal entity that would be a partnership, or in either being a framework where we would be able to, because we so nicely, our boundaries so nicely incorporate most of the watershed and the developed and developable land, a potential rate structure that we could then partner with, maybe contract out services to the county. So we are actively looking at different ideas of how we can participate both in on-the-ground activities as well as potentially being a funding source.
Kathy?
I would like to see us continue to direct our resources into the Basin 1 and Basin 2 areas, and where we're getting the most bang for our buck. I also would like to have consideration for if we're looking at wanting to put in expensive systems that treat stormwater, and we want to create stormwater districts and raise rates for people in those areas. I think we need to consider what we're doing to prevent new ratepayers from entering that system. I would like us to consider whether buying up land and for the preservation of it is actually helping us in raising funds to put these systems in or to maintain them, as we were told is going to be one of our next hurdles. Basin 3, the biggest part of the lake, the deepest part of the lake with, 96% of the water, is an area that I think we don't need to be putting in a lot of resources, and I would like to see them kept in Basins 1 and 2.
Comments? Laura?
Can you elaborate on something you said about refraining from charging the new ratepayers, or you said something like that? I didn't follow what you were meaning.
I'm talking about when we put in regulations or we purchase property in the watershed that prevents growth or future growth or further growth. It takes away the opportunity then to have a ratepayer that can contribute to a stormwater system or a catchment system or maintenance of the systems we have in place already. And I just think that it's something that we need to consider and make sure that we are understanding the implications of some of those decisions that we're making. I know that right now the county is getting, the Planning Commission for the county is going to have a Lake Whatcom development package coming to us soon. And they're struggling with this issue right now as to what kind of development regulations we want to see put in the county's area of the Lake Whatcom watershed, and trying to weigh out the benefits of having some growth that could pay for some systems that would filter and take care of stormwater, as opposed to saying, no more growth, and the people that live there now are going to have to pay for everything. So. Pete?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few things that I'd like to just throw out for your consumption here, and there are three major issues. One of them is that we need to be strategic about the way we go about implementing our addressing the stormwater issue, which I think is a critical and imperative effort that we need to embark on as aggressively as funds will allow. But again, Councilmember Kirshner, I think, is right in that it's basically the same thing as what I'm saying, is that basins 1 and 2 are, in my opinion, the most strategic areas and get the best bang for your buck. Another issue that I'd like to throw out there is that all three jurisdictions, in my opinion, have not been vigilant enough in preventing the use of fertilizers within the Lake Whatcom watershed. I think, I'm not an expert, but I just have to believe that fertilizers in the Lake Whatcom watershed in the urbanized area is a significant cause for the phosphorus loading that we're seeing year after year after year. And I know we have a ban on it in the county, but I mean, I drive throughout the Lake Whatcom watershed every day, or almost every day, and I see almost every lawn without any dandelions that look like putting greens, and you know, and I'll even mention the golf course at Sudden Valley. I know that that's it's a major aspect of that development, that association, but I think that to the best of my knowledge, they are still continuing to use fertilizers that contain phosphorus. And, I think that we need to stop that practice, and we need to be more vigilant. It may be labor intensive somewhat, but I think that we actually, if we did more aggressively enforce the prohibition of phosphorus fertilizers in the watershed, I think that there would be a significant gain derived. The other issue that I want to point out is, I don't know whether you were aware of it or not, but when we were going through that pie chart about the phosphorus and the number of were they pounds or tons? No, pounds. I noticed that the forested areas didn't change at all. It stayed at between 1/5 and 1/4 of all the phosphorus in the lake. And I just want to put in some would say maybe a shameless plug in for supporting the Lake Whatcom Forest Preserve, because I think that would have a positive impact and effect on what we saw up there as no reduction at all. And I think that there would be at least some, if not a significant reduction, with a very, very minimal amount of expenditure.
Bill, you had your comment?
Yeah, I'd like to agree with what was said earlier in the fact that basins 1 and 2, what we're seeing, I think, is when we can, those are the two areas where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. And it looks like, to me, the studies that we see on the policy group are demonstrating when we can control the runoff to some extent, we are impacting the amount of phosphorus we load in the lake. But I was a little concerned with some of the recent studies that show some of the some of the higher loading was done in areas where we couldn't control the runoff and were some of the undeveloped areas of the lake. So I don't know if of what you're saying with the forest preserve really holds its weight. So.
Barbara?
Yes, it was very shameless what you did, because that is a want, and we have information from ecology and everybody else saying there is no significant amount that the DNR is creating by their practices. Not only have they improved their practices, we did the Lake Whatcom landscape plan. This is I was trying to be nice, and I didn't want to bring this up, but that is exactly a perfect example of how, oh, it's going to hardly cost us anything.
Can we get back on the subject of funding for this?
This is maintenance and no, I mean,
Funding.
he brought it up. This is about funding. We don't have funding. For more staff, which the Parks Director said we need to focus on the development and the stormwater runoff from development. And I just feel, here we go, down that slippery slope again of what we want rather than what we need.
Can anybody in the county speak to the funding? Todd, do you have a comment? I know you're not county.
I'm not going to step into that.
Yeah.
So just a question to staff regarding on-the-ground kinds of projects and how we can start putting dollars to projects and what we could start thinking about, and in particular, thinking about the homeowner incentive program. And there was some mention that might be extended beyond its current geographic boundaries, and I'm wondering what the plan is for that and what it would take to get it, for example, into Geneva and into, more into Basin 2. And not sure if that's John or...
Anything further? Would Sun Valley like to say something about the golf course?
I would love to hear.
Bill, go ahead, Bill Riley.
Bill Riley, City of Bellingham. Your question regarding the HIP program, we think that is an area where we can make some strides in phosphorus removal that are not available through large systems, and it gets to the root cause of the phosphorus as well. And so we're early on in the HIP process that we have right now, but we're encouraged by the willingness of people to change what they're doing on their landscapes with an incentive involved. And but we think that from a cost perspective, is probably one of the better solutions that we're seeing for removal. And it goes to what Claire talked about in really engaging people on a one-on-one basis. So I have a good staff that's working on our HIP program. We have a grant from the Department of Ecology that is aiding us in doing that. That's a $500,000 grant with a $167,000 match that goes with it. We will be engaged in that till 2014, doing HIP projects, but I would foresee that at the end of that time that would be a good place for monies to be put to augment what stormwater facilities are doing. And what I should make a plug for is that one of the things that we see is the lakeside, particularly the lakeside properties, they don't lend themselves to be captured into any of our systems. So the only way that we can really deal with the lakeside properties is on an individual basis, and that's what our focus is going to be.
Okay. Michael?
Bill, don't go away just yet. You probably can't do it now, but I think what Todd was saying is that what would it take, what would it cost to extend this pilot program out to future areas? We can probably do a ballpark estimate of like households, dollars per household to run the pilot project, and then maybe we can make an estimate that when we extended that, it might maybe be less expensive or more expensive, I don't know, if you expand it. I assume less expensive. Pilot projects, I assume, you know, first time through, it's more expensive. So the question might be to the other jurisdictions, okay, now that Bellingham has a pilot project, what does it cost for all of us to start implementing it more broadly? And will we be able to have, again, cost estimates so we as policymakers can say, okay, that's how much it costs. Now we know, now we can decide whether we want to actually do it or not.
Let me give you a little background on the program itself, and we provide for incentives to individual property owners to the tune of up to $6,000 per property owner. And the amount of money that's provided to them is based on the percentage of the property that they are able to retrofit for phosphorus. Projects involve such things as putting in infiltration facilities, filtration facilities, removal of lawns, which are the highest exporter of phosphorus that we have in the landscape. Those sorts of projects. And we are finding a number of people that are able to reach that $6,000 plateau where they are dealing with the runoff on their properties at the 90 to 95% level. So we're encouraged by what we're doing there, and I think that, you know, we work very closely with the Department of Ecology, and they've been very supportive in that process as well.
We're coming up on 8:25 now. We've gone way past our time, as is usual. I think that this topic of stormwater, I don't see any consensus here at all. It's, I think, a process that will be better worked by smaller groups in trying to pull together some sort of a consensus on how we should move forward in the city, the county, and the district making commitments and finding funding. It's, you know, I see no solutions coming out of tonight. I'd like to mention that Stan Snap was going to be making a presentation about a project that he wanted the policy group to work on, having to do with a long-range plan as proposed by Steve Wood from DOE, and there is a page about that up on the table there if you'd like to look at that. Stan was not able to be here tonight. So with the few minutes we have left, let's go into community comments, and I have one name on the list here, Nikki Thane. And if you just come up to the microphone.
Hello, my name is Nikki Thane. I'm the member of the Watershed Advisory Board, and I wanted to read a letter on behalf of the board. The Watershed Advisory Board is concerned about the potential infestation of Lake Whatcom by zebra and quagga mussels. The fact that Asian clams have been found around boat launch sites with the indication that they have been in Lake Whatcom for several years highlights the potential for infestation by the more destructive mussels. Aside from water quality problems presented by the Asian clams, their presence in a lake has been found to concentrate calcium, providing a more hospitable environment for successful mussel reproduction. And I will also add, in answer to Leslie McRoberts' question, the mussels have been proven to excessively filter lake water, clarifying it to greater depths, which gives more opportunity for the algae to grow in greater quantity. So it is also a phosphorus concern in that way. Once established, the mussels are prolific, encrusting and clogging pipes that transport water. Whether these pipes move water to treatment plants, individual homeowner water supply, or boat engines, their treatment is causing millions of dollars in damages elsewhere in the country. It is our opinion that unregulated access of boats on Lake Whatcom will lead to other invasive species infestations. We are aware of the city's rapid response in preparing a boat inspection protocol for the spring start of the 2012 boating season. However, it is clear to us that the program will not be staffed and up and running quickly enough to protect Lake Whatcom this year. It is with this in mind that we recommend that the City of Bellingham close the Blodell Donovan boat ramp as soon as possible and continue the closure until a comprehensive program is developed and fully implemented to prevent zebra and quagga mussels from infesting our reservoir. We acknowledge that there are many other access points entering Lake Whatcom besides Blodell Donovan, but as the primary launch site that is under the management of the city and the only one inside city limits, a Blodell Donovan boat launch closure would have a motivating effect on public awareness of this important lake quality issue. The action will send a strong and timely message to the entire community about the seriousness of the concern for these invasive species and the commitment of the city to protecting its municipal water supply. Free and unregulated or poorly regulated access to Lake Whatcom by powerboats, sailboats, canoes, kayaks, rowboats, jet skis, and boat planes, float planes, is clearly an unsustainable practice, and it does not make sense for 95,000 water drinkers to end up paying mitigation costs for traveling boaters to introduce invasive species into our reservoir water. We recommend that every urgent effort be made by the city, the county, and Sudden Valley to develop and institute protocols for boat inspection at all public and private launch sites to ensure that further invasive species do not enter the lake. If there is not adequate staffing or funding for a comprehensive inspection program at both public and private sites, the city and county should simply prohibit watercraft on our drinking water supply. Our irreplaceable community resource for drinking water must not be compromised. Had we had a comprehensive inspection protocol in place in previous years, we may have prevented our current Asian clam infestation. To say the same a year from now, after finding a much more destructive mussel infestation, would be costly to our budget and devastating to our water supply. Every effort should be made to post signs at the boat launch site as soon as possible to help educate the community on this invasive species issue. Bold action is necessary to protect Lake Whatcom. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public?
Wendy Harris. The county and the city have adopted a water quality improvement approach that relies heavily on stormwater engineering and stormwater design. While this allows better control over phosphorus loading, the benefits of this approach are being undercut by simultaneous reductions in residential development standards. Improved stormwater design is being used to justify more watershed development, increased impervious surface, and decreased vegetation and forest covering. These things are the very source of water quality degradation and also have the effect of increasing recreational use of the lake, which also impacts water quality. Examples of this problem can be seen in the city's Silver Beach ordinance and the county's proposed stormwater regulations. For stormwater design and engineering to be effective as a solution, they must not be coupled with reduced development standards. Moreover, an expensive mechanistic approach fails to recognize that healthy water is the result of a healthy ecosystem. Forest cover is the highest and best ecological use of land in the watershed. It provides important ecosystem services that no engineered solution can fully mimic. Our policies need to place greater emphasis on prohibiting the further loss of forest cover, enhancing existing forest, and replacing lost forest. The highest functioning forest is old growth forest, which should never be destroyed. We need the reconveyance of the Lake Forest Preserve to manage a large forested portion of the watershed as reestablished old growth forest. We should continue to support and increase our property acquisition programs. Updated stormwater standards should be viewed only as one component of a comprehensive landscape-based management plan for Lake Whatcom. We need more restrictive zoning to reduce watershed density and to ensure greater protection for existing forest cover. We need updated land use regulations that reduce impervious surface, increase vegetation retention requirements, increase buffers, and impose on-site infiltration requirements. Many of these updated standards could be imposed on existing development. Moreover, they are not going to be restricted by lack of funding. These are things that we could move forward with now. These are the types of things that would pass the costs of water quality degradation more fairly along to those who are causing the impacts instead of the general public. We also need to start applying SEPA mitigation requirements. We know that all shoreline development will result in a net loss of shoreline functions without full mitigation and additional compensatory mitigation for ongoing and future impacts. Yet both the county and the city routinely issue SEPA determinations of non-significance for new or expanded docks, knowing that overwater structures have some of the most harmful impacts. I also hope that you'll consider having more opportunity for public input on the invasive species plan. There's things I'd like to address on that, but I know that the time is late and I'm out of time, so thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I see there's a couple more people. If you can do very short comments, we are past our 8:30 deadline.
Thank you. My name's Larry Mansfield. I'm on the Watershed Advisory Board, and I live in Geneva, so I'm in the county. But I would like to speak primarily to the City Council, since the park is the city's park, and the 82,000 roughly people who drink the water out of the lake that live in the city of Bellingham are really subject to quite a danger.
Are your comments in line with the first speaker we had here?
No, I'm going to say something different.
Different, all right.
If you were to ask somebody about Asian clams a year ago, you would probably have been told, oh, they're not too much of a problem for Lake Whatcom. And then they give you some reasons. And yet, a year ago, they were already well established in several places along the lake. Where are we with zebra mussels? You don't know. You don't know how close they are. The USGS, United States Geodetic Survey, has a really great website that shows year by year from '86 on how they've moved from Lake Erie into California. And of course, it's only shows the ones we know, the places, you know, they can be there, like how long the clams were here. The idea of closing the boat launch for a year provides us with the time we need to really think about how we're going to approach this. If you look at the plans that are going on, there's some substantial reworking of Blodell Donovan Park projected, a major road just to hold all these boat trailers. So I would just say it makes a lot of sense. Stop that ramp for a year, sit back and start looking carefully at the danger that's involved and what we can do about it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is CJ Huxford from Northwest Rain Solutions. I install rain gardens, rainwater catchment, and infiltration trenches throughout Whatcom County, particularly in the Whatcom watershed. And I just want to make a comment on what Mr. Riley explained about the homeowner incentive program and how effective it is at not only reducing the amount of runoff, but also creating a sense of awareness about the risk to the water quality. And I just have to say that there was a comment or a question about how much would it cost to expand the homeowner incentive program. And the best thing to do is basically to approach contractors in the private sector. And, you know, we talk to people every single day that want to do things on their own property, even if it's small, that could go a long way. And so that's all I have to say. We do it every day. And I think you should just approach the private sector and talk to them about pricing packages and stuff that could work and then be replicated. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have come to the end of our meeting. I think it's been a very interesting discussion that we have had, a lot of different opinions, and I think that both of these topics we need to take back into our councils and commissions and decide how we're going to move forward. Right now, I will adjourn the meeting for the county, for the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District. For the city and the county. Okay, meeting adjourned.